Let's turn to Turkey, which is marking the first anniversary of the failed coup against President Erdogan, in which at least 260 people died and more than 2,000 were wounded. Well, President Erdogan has attended a mass rally in Istanbul alongside hundreds of thousands of supporters. Since the coup attempt, the government has fired more than 140,000 state employees because of suspected links to the plotters. 7,000 more were dismissed on Friday. Let's discuss further. We're joined by Michael Daventry, a UK-based journalist on Turkish matters. A lot of different events taking place. President Erdogan has been speaking at length. What did you think of what he said? Because I know that he took a really religious stance in this speech.
He did, yes. I mean, for me, having watched Turkey for quite a while now, it was one of the most pious speeches of his career. We know he's a religious man. It's been in his politics for a long time, but he's always played a very careful game when it comes to managing Turkey's secular system, which is the foundations on which it was built nearly 100 years ago. But this time, it wasn't just peppered with religious references, it was littered with it. Every point was about how it was a virtuous fight against evil terrorists and how all of the people who died during the coup attempt this time last year, how they'd all gone to heaven. It was very unusual from that point of view for me.
Now, he's been going to different events. I believe he's going to be in Ankara at some point as well, and these are events that will be going throughout the dawn to mark what was happening on the night a year ago. This was a huge turning point for Turkey, wasn't it?
Oh, it was, and it was absolutely traumatic as well. Speaking, I'm Turkish myself, and I was watching it from the UK, and to see, it's really hard to describe how, you know, the streets that you grew up on and played football on, to see tanks driving down them, not just down the middle, but deliberately over parked cars. It's a horrific thing to have to witness. So a part of what's happening today is justified. Turkey is angry that this could possibly happen to them, and they want to vent some of that anger. The problem is, though, that there is a picture of unity that's being portrayed, and it isn't entirely genuine.
Now, the coup, the failed coup, the fact that they were supporting democracy, but they'd won over these people who were trying to threaten Turkish democracy. And yet what we've been seeing since that coup is an overwhelming curtailing of Turkish democracy. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting how Turkey's been left between, the choice this time last year was a choice between a military dictatorship and, in effect, a civilian one. And that is what's happened in Turkey. 3-4 months ago, there was a referendum which granted President Erdogan sweeping new powers. And from the next election, he will be a directly elected executive president with all sorts of powers to appoint and to rule by decree. But in addition to that, he's very good now at dismissing the opposition as being with the terrorists. So you mentioned a speech that he's due to deliver in Parliament at about 2:30 local time, which will be precisely the moment a year on from when Parliament was bombed by the people carrying out the coup. The opposition have said that they're not going to come to that because they've been told that they can't speak at that event. So there's a very polarised atmosphere in Turkey. The country is divided right down the middle, even though we're getting these pictures of flag-waving people on the streets defending Turkish democracy. It just isn't the full picture.
Well, it's important to stress that even yesterday we had 7,500 dismissals, up to 150,000 people removed from their posts. How on earth does a country work when so many state employees are not at work?
I mean, that's a fascinating point. It's all happening as part of the state of emergency. And a friend of mine who got into a property dispute in Turkey about 3-4 months ago said that his court case, which he had with another party, was delayed for several months because of the coup and there wasn't a judge. When the judge was finally appointed, he was 24 years old. There's such a gap at the moment in the civil service and in public office that they're trying to fill positions with anybody that they can. And I mean, I don't know what you'd think, but I think 24 is a little young for a judge, but it's all they've got.
Fascinating to speak to you, Michael Daventry. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, those events taking place throughout the night. Thank you, Michael.